Good evening. I'm Rick Tate. I'm the chairman of the Pickens County Republican Party. I'd like to thank you all for coming out tonight. A good-looking crowd. We're going to start off tonight with a prayer. Pastor Kelly.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for the blessings that we've been afforded to live in this great nation. We thank you for its history and the blessings that we enjoy as citizens of this great country. And Lord, I pray tonight as we've gathered in this place to hear from the speaker tonight that you would help us to exhibit grace and kindness and charity. And Lord, may we be wise in exercising the duties and responsibilities that we have. We thank you for this opportunity and to let our voice be heard and to hear from others. And we pray as we do so tonight that we would be pleasing to you. And may our speech be, as you admonish us, seasoned with grace. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. If you'd all join me in standing and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. The reason we're here tonight is to meet Catherine Templeton and to get a little information. And when I became the chairman of the Pickens County GOP, I started looking for something that is a guide for our mission statement. And the very first vote I ever cast was for Ronald Reagan in 1976 when I just turned 21. So that's how I ended up a conservative and have the values and principles in politics that I do. This is what I found to use as a mission statement for us. The principles of conservatism are sound because they are based on what men and women have discovered through experience, and not just one generation or a dozen, but in all the combined experience of mankind. I have seen the conservative future. It works. Our task is not to sell a philosophy, but to make the majority of Americans who already share the philosophy see that modern conservatism offers them a political home. And that's what we're trying to do here in Pickens County. That's what I'm trying to do, is share that political philosophy. If you're unfamiliar with what it is, I urge you to go get on the internet and Google South Carolina Republican Party platform. It's laid out clear and plain. It's very conservative, and it is what we stand for, and it is what I am here to promote. That said, let's talk about Catherine. She's the reason we're here, and hopefully she's here to share those principles too. When I first started reading about Catherine, I started, like a lot of people in politics, I started reading to see what I could find. And one of the first things that caught my eye was she had worked with Sandra Day O'Connor to teach civics to middle school kids so they would know how government works. I think that's something very lacking in our school system. I had civics in high school, my daughter didn't. So I had that thought in my mind, and then I thought your people have done a very good job of putting you out on social media. Everywhere you look, there's Catherine asking you, what do you think? So I responded to her. I'm sure she didn't know who I was from Adam's House Cat at the time. Here was my statement. You want my input? Happy to give it to you. At the root of most, if not all of our problems in state government is the fact that we do not have a separation of powers between the three branches of government in South Carolina. A handful of legislators I do not get to vote for or against control our state government. They do this by appointment of committees that carry out the majority of the traditional duties of the executive branch. And they have complete control over who becomes and remains a judge in our judicial system. Self-governance cannot occur when there is not a direct line of accountability to the people. Under current circumstances, I cannot hold those with power over me and the fruits of my labor accountable. They do not have to face me at the ballot box. If you want my vote, run on restoring accountability in South Carolina state government. Run on true reform that honors the founding principles of our country. She gave me a one-word response with an exclamation point. Yes. That's when I wrote the email to invite you here. So you have my interest, you have my attention. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here tonight. And that really was my response. My people, there are not very many people, despite I have a new campaign manager now. He started today. But when we started running on this journey, it was me. And we raised more money in that first quarter than the last 3 governors. And we didn't spend a dime of it because it was me. And then my husband looked at me and said, "You look like you're staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning, honey, and you need to stop that." So we are off to the races. And it was interesting today. I was meeting with this husband and wife, and we were talking. And as we walked out of their small business, he introduced me to his daughter. And she was pleasant. We had a good time, and we talked. And then I left, but I walked back in because I'd forgotten something. And he was laughing so hard he was crying. And I said, "What?" And he said, tell her, just tell her. And she said, "I didn't know who you were." And I said, "I hope that changes pretty soon." She goes, "No, I'd heard your name." She goes, "But when you walked through, I didn't know you were running for governor because you don't act like a politician." And I said, "Oh, well, first I thought you'd never heard of my name," which is really okay too, sweetheart. But, you know. So that's why I'm here tonight. I've lived all over South Carolina. I grew up in Lexington County. And then when I left, I grew up and graduated from Irmo High School. And I came up to the upstate, and I lived, worked, and, went to school up here. So I'm very comfortable in the upstate. And when Gresham Barrett, who I supported for governor a long, long time ago, came down to Charleston, where my husband is from and where we're raising our kids, and said, "What's the difference between the upstate and the low country?" I said, "Sit down. We've got to talk about this for about an hour." But at the end of the day, we are all South Carolinians, and we all have the same issues. I've just met a just graduated high school senior who's going to Anderson. He's going to be a history professor, and he said there are no new problems. They just rebrand them. And we give up either before we finish, make sure I get this right, we either give up before we finish or we start fighting amongst ourselves before we solve the problems. That's exactly where we are. Not a wiser thing has ever been said. So in South Carolina, we're number 50 in education. We deserve better than that. And it's not new. We've been number 50. We've had problems with education for the last 30 years. For the last 30 years, if not more, corruption has been a problem. Still a problem now. Lifting our best and brightest out of bad circumstances has been a problem. Still a problem now. So we have all of these old problems, but we keep putting the same people in office to fix them over and over and over again. If you do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result, what is that? Insanity is the definition of insanity. Not only that, but we have growing pains. We've attracted all of this talent, and we've brought in all these jobs, but now we have more people than our infrastructure can sustain. What are we doing about it? We're throwing money at it. It's enough. I have spent virtually my entire life in the private sector, and in the private sector, there are outcomes, and it's math, and you have to deliver. In government, we get very confused, and we have a lot of meetings, and we confuse motion with progress. But in the private sector, if you don't do well, you get fired. If you do well, you get promoted. It's pretty easy. My first job, I've had 3 jobs, was in a weave mill in Jonesville, South Carolina. And again, if you did well, you got promoted. And I got promoted to Walhalla, South Carolina, and was living in a fishing trailer off the Fairplay exit, driving over to Georgia because I would not leave South Carolina. And it's when all of our jobs were going off out of the country. It was in the early 90s. So I took the money I had earned, and I went to law school, and I left law school, and I fought for a decade plus for our jobs. I fought labor unions. I fought all over the nation. I advised Fortune 500 companies. They don't succeed, and we don't have jobs if they don't hold each other accountable. So Governor Haley, when Boeing decided it was coming here, Governor Haley had just been elected, and she asked me to come and bring my private sector understanding and experience to make government smaller and smarter. And she wanted the labor unions to know that they were not invited. So we went and we fought for our jobs in South Carolina. Boeing came, the union said, you can't have those jobs, those are ours. The Obama administration, the day I got appointed, filed an NLRB charge against me. I got sued personally, individually, my husband was thrilled. Within about, I think, a month, we got sued by the AFL-CIO because we were taking union jobs. But you know what happened after about a year? We won. And we kept South Carolina jobs in South Carolina, and we kept them union-free, and we've grown them since then. And that's what we have to do in every part of our government. You know, I made the comment to a group one night that we're number 50 in education and we're number 1 in criminal domestic violence. That's us on us. That's not acceptable. And there has to be some type of relationship there. And somebody said, well, if you're talking about education, is that really a conservative value? Yes, absolutely it is. Now, I mean, I don't know if anybody remembers what Horace Mann said when they decided that we should all start educating our society. Does anybody remember? He said, this is going to be great. Everybody's going to have common sense and be smart, and we're not going to have criminals, and it's going to be wonderful. We're going to be able to feed ourselves. Well, that is kind of the goal, right? Let the teachers teach. Let the principals lead, so that the children at the end of the day can support themselves, feed themselves and their children hopefully one day. I don't know when it stopped being honorable to have a trade. My grandfather was a plumber, and he did really well by 5 children as a plumber. And I had a career center, is what we called it, at Irmo High School. I got out of there, I could have had my real estate license. I learned to type. If I had been at all handy, I would have been able to do woodworking and electrician. But we don't do that anymore in South Carolina. Even our tech schools are now junior colleges because it's cheaper to go there and then transfer into a Clemson or a Carolina. I don't know what happened. But I started looking, and it looks like government incentivizes it. Government's paying more money for AP credits, which is good, but you also have got to have a workforce. So I could talk to you all day long about why I'm doing this crazy journey and what on earth there is, why you should vote for me and not somebody else. But the bottom line is this. I was private sector, and I went into the government, and I had a front row seat to the corruption in Columbia. I cannot unsee what I saw. And just like when I was fired up because our church was not doing well in the Sunday school and I became the Sunday school coordinator, or when my son, I have 3 children, but when my son was too little to be a Boy Scout and I was on the Boy Scout board because they needed some help, or when my mother-in-law made me be on the garden club and I still can't keep flowers alive. We are Southerners. We are South Carolina, and when something needs help, we go help. I was able to go into the government, sit there at the front row, watch people line their pockets. I now know all the tricks. I've watched them. I have watched them pass through things. I've watched them pay their friends. Guys, I've never run for anything. I don't owe anybody anything. I don't want anything from anybody. But I am South Carolina born and bred, and I am not going to let us continue to fail. So, with that, y'all have a lot of personal issues, personal things that you want to talk about. I'm undefined, so ask me anything. I came here because your reputation is that you are the most conservative of the most conservative. And so I welcome listening and answering your questions so that we can start knowing who Catherine Templeton is.
Turn me up, John.
Is he going to start singing?
No. Lord, no. Guys, one thing I was I didn't do that I should have done. There's a couple of people in the room we need to recognize. Senator Rex Rice is right here with us tonight. Representative Davy Hyde in the corner. The chairman of the Anderson County Republican Party, Cheryl Coultrell. My apologies for not doing that earlier. I get better at this as I go. Now, as to the questions.
Come in, no, come in.
Yeah, come on in and join us, please. Elliot, where did you get to? Oh, Elliot Kelly and I will have microphones, and we will bring them around the room. If you just raise your hand if you have a question. Real simple rules, or if you want to call them rules, guidelines.
Be nice.
Yeah, there you go. Just wait till we come to you to ask your question and give you the mic. Make your points brief and to the point, and above all, be polite. Other than that, ask anything you'd like. So, who wants to be first? And we'll alternate from one side to the other.
I'm already standing up.
There you go. Mr. Dan Winchester.
Yes, I'm with the Taxpayers Association. All of us have been reading quite a bit about South Carolina having the highest electricity rates in the nation. And we got our own state-owned Santee Cooper operation, and they have already collected our money to build those nuclear plants, and now they got our money, and then they're going to tear them back down. What can we do to straighten out that kind of mess in South Carolina? What do you suggest? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winchester. So, of course, everybody has seen that in the newspaper. I think there's going to be a settlement, we hope, that's going to pay back some of the billions. But here's my biggest concern. The biggest concern is that there's nobody protecting us. The law allows these utilities to raise our rates, so we all paid in. All of us paid in. They used the money to pay for the nuclear facilities that we're never going to get. And in fact, there's one of the utilities that's going to now, they say they're now going to build a different and other thing, and we're going to continue to pay in. I don't think they're going to rebate our money. They haven't told me that, but I'm feeling pretty confident they're not going to rebate our money. And you have to, if you want to turn the lights on, use their electricity. So who's protecting us? And what's even worse, and my bigger concern is that, and I'm going to say present company accepted because I know both of these gentlemen, and I know them to be honorable men, but we've got some people in Columbia who are bought and paid for by the utilities. Go look at the contributions for this campaign. I'm not one of them. So you've got to have, if government's going to allow them to be the only providers, them to take our money before they give us anything back and not protect us, we've got a problem. We have to put new people up there. I'll pledge to you right now that's not going to happen if I'm the governor. It's not. And what's more important than that, no governor in South Carolina under this Constitution is in charge. However, I work with the legislature. More important than me saying I'll work with them is that the majority leader of the House and the majority leader of the Senate both endorsed me before I even announced. Not because I roll over, not because they can do but because they worked with me for 4 years, and they know that if I tell them something, I'm going to tell the person that's on the other side of them the very same thing when they leave the room. I will do what I say, and I will say what I do, especially when it gets hot. So this is a huge problem. It is a billions of dollar problem. Now, the good thing is that there was a report that we were not going to have enough power and what was going to happen. It's my understanding from all the utilities that we have plenty of power. In fact, we've gotten more efficient at delivery of power. We've gotten more efficient in our use of power. So we're not going to be in the dark. There's an awful lot of money that was thrown down the drain. And at the end of the day, it's a company that went bankrupt, and we didn't have the contract to make us whole. So the answer is, I guess, a political one. We've got to have somebody protecting us. If you're going to allow the utilities to take from us, you got to stop them from taking any more. I'll also be interested to see what the same executives who contributed to the campaign, what kind of salaries they have.
Hey, Ms. Templeton, thank you for being here. I'm Justin Durham. I'm from the great metropolis of Pickens, Mr. Hyatt's district over there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding these town halls. I've got a couple of questions for you. Number one, I work in Anderson County, booming with manufacturing, and what you were talking about in terms of trade schools, I'm very interested to hear what your plan would be to bring those back to our state. Secondly, and I've mentioned this on Facebook to one of your supporters, I've seen a lot of rhetoric, I guess would be the best word used, saying that you're going to go down there and, blow up the good old boy system and things of that nature. Have no problem with that. I'm all for it. How do you keep it from becoming a food war, if you will? The same thing that's going on in D.C. right now. How do you keep it from becoming just basically a scrum where everybody's fighting everybody like it is in D.C.? How do you keep it civil and still shake up the establishment?
That's a great question and a very, very important one. Like Chairman Hyatt and Senator Rice, there's some really good white hats in Columbia. It's actually not necessarily the legislature who are the problems. It is the contracts and it's the legislators who self-deal. And it's not illegal in South Carolina. So let's start with that. You can report on your economic interest statement that you're making some money, but if you're a subcontractor, I'm sorry, I'm not explaining this very well because it's really a weave, a web they've weaved. We have legislators making $40 million off state money, of our money. If you're going to serve in the legislature, either commit not to making money off the state while you're in charge of the contracts and the money, or don't be a legislator. It's that simple. So it doesn't have to be acrimonious. It's some very specific practices and problems. And, one thing that Rick mentioned was my relationship with Sandra Day O'Connor. That woman has been in more places and in more rooms and dealt with more issues in her lifetime than we probably will ever know. And she believes that the downfall of civilization, the one thing that she believes is the downfall of civilization, is that Congress can go home at night and they don't have to break bread with each other. So that's how you do it. It's relationships. It truly is relationships. My governor was Carol Campbell. I'm dating myself, but that was my governor. In Columbia, where I grew up, if you wanted to improve your resume, you went and you worked for the House of Representatives and, for that last month of the summer. And he was kneeling down next to one of the desks in the House, and I tripped over his back foot as a page. He had his sleeves rolled up, he had his jacket off, he was working with the legislature. You don't have to beat people up. In fact, if you beat people up, it's not productive. And I think all of us know in our lives, when you do business with people, you may not always love everybody you're doing business with, or the volunteers that you've got to herd to get something done, but you do have to get it done. And you do have to be professional and an adult about it. So it's a personality situation. It's a relationship issue. It is a legal issue. It's a lot. But we can change the trajectory if we change the law just a little bit and we let the white hats take over. Oh, what was the first part, second part? Bring back trade schools. See, this is why I didn't talk very long because my answers are just enormously, detailed. We don't have to do it at the trade school level. If we would actually treat our education K through 12 system like it was intended to be treated, we wouldn't have to spend extra money in trade school. Right now we have high school seniors who go home, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 12 o'clock and don't even come on Thursday and Friday because they're finished with the required things. But why aren't we capturing that time to teach them a skill? There are a lot of different programs in our technical colleges that try to do that. None of them have been scaled really well. A lot of them take industry, and industry will say, I need you to provide me with more fill in the blank, and they'll do it. But we've got to really start over. And in our high schools, go back to the way it was when we actually had people that worked in trades. We have in South Carolina, not only do we have a labor shortage, but we have a lot of people who don't want to work. It's not our unemployment rate's great. That's great. But we have a lot of people who don't want to work. And I don't think it's because they're not skilled. I think it's because they don't want to work. It's cheaper. It's more lucrative to stay home. So we've got to change that too. And Governor Haley and I did a lot with the work fair when we were there too. So I'm acutely aware. They gave you the microphone completely?
Yes, ma'am.
Isn't that against the rules?
I don't know. You can take it back. But I'd like to thank you for coming and sharing with us. And I've been wanting to get to know you and understand what you stand for. I'm from Anderson County. I live in Pendleton over here, and I'm a member of the Sons of Confederate Veterans, and Southern heritage is a very important issue to me. I guess you've seen all the monuments being took down in Louisiana and all the anti-Southern things going on. And I feel anti-Southernism is not a conservative value. And I'd like to know your opinion on Southern heritage and Southern defense. Thank you.
Not on my watch. I don't think there's anything else to say about it. You cannot rewrite history. I don't care whose feelings it hurts. You cannot rewrite history. It is doomed to repeat itself, right? If you can't. And I'm born here, raised here, like I said. When I was confirmed in 8th grade, I grew up Methodist. When I was confirmed, my grandmother handed me my papers first and then handed me my Bible. She was a daughter of the Confederacy, a daughter of the Revolution, that type of thing. And I didn't understand it in 8th grade. But we're standing on the shoulders of giants in South Carolina. And it's why we are who we are and where we are. And I very much respect the men who gave their homes, their fortunes, and their lives to put us in this position. Fortunately, we have a law, too, that protects us, and I'm sure it will be enforced.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ms. Templeton. My name is Jay Nash. I'm from Columbia, South Carolina as well. Just quick question. Of course, the gas tax is a hot topic. The General Assembly just recently, passed legislation, which ultimately passed. It was vetoed. Would you have passed that legislation the way it was passed? And if not, what would your solution be?
Thank you. I'd love to see more money go to the roads. And when we looked at it before it was passed, there was some money that were going to different agencies, but even if you pulled all of that back in, it wouldn't be enough. I'd like to see more money go to the roads. However, throwing more money at it is not going to fix it. The Department of Transportation is not accountable to anyone. It is run by political appointees. It is funded by people who do favors for each other. I think that this new law that has been passed has stopped the commissioner's ability to do contracts on behalf of the state, so that's very helpful. I think now that the governor can appoint the commissioners, that's very helpful. So there's more accountability, and that is a great step in the right direction. But we have enough money if we would spend it on the things that government was created to do. We're not getting what we paid for. If we just very simply took the money that was for the necessary evils, so that's what, safety? We all do that better. I mean, I have a concealed weapon, not on me, I have a concealed weapons permit, but I'm not in Charleston with my children, and so I expect that if they need me, that law enforcement will show up. So safety, we do together. Education. I love my children, and I tried to homeschool them. And they didn't love me back for much longer after that. So I send them to school. And it's better if we all go to school because it's cheaper. It's what we've always done, the agrarian society. So education and infrastructure. If I had the money and the big equipment to pave my own road to get to my church, to my school, to my job, I may not pave yours. So we do it together. We all pay in, and we all should get out those things. Now, we also have a health care burden. We also have debt. We don't pay for those things first, and we need to get what we pay for first. Now, the system is a problem. These gentlemen start every legislative session with last year's budget. It's the way that it's written. So if they want to change anything, wholesale or just a little bit, to give you money, they've got to take from you. And you're not going to like that. So they start having to make somebody mad to make any change. It's a flawed system. But with the Department of Transportation, back to your original question, and probably like every agency in the state, there has to be accountability. The governor's not in charge of roads. Governor's not in charge of education. Why? Then you can hold somebody accountable.
Hello, Mary Mills. Thank you for coming to Pickens. And I just wanted to ask you, who did you support in the presidential primary race? And also, would you support the president for re-election?
Thank you. So I am, because I'm South Carolina forever, a big fan of the Bush family. And they asked me to support Jeb. The thing about me that you'll find is that I'm loyal. If I tell you I'm going to do something, I stick with it no matter what. I'll do it as governor. Of course, I support President Trump. In fact, he called me up to Trump Tower. Somebody said the other day, kidding around, you got to go before Carly and Kanye to go see President Trump. He interviewed me for the Department of Labor when he was interviewing cabinet members. And I'll tell you what I was impressed by. He has a business mind. I was in the room with Steve Bannon, Reince Priebus, and then Vice President-elect Pence, all three of whom have different perspectives. And he listened to all three of them and then made a decision. And that was important. It was important to see his patience and his and taking advice from others was very good. I think President Trump is trying to do what he said he would do. But the media and the entrenched bureaucrats that are held over have teamed up to do everything they can to make this messy and difficult. It's another reason that I feel like I need to offer my service. I've been in the private sector. I understand the business acumen. I understand outcomes. But if you haven't been to see the different rules in government, if you don't understand how they do things, it's difficult to get through that bureaucracy. You got to know how to skin a cat. Andy Card, who is he a South Carolina graduate? Andy Card was chief of staff. Yes, South Carolina graduate. Andy Card told President Trump at his 100 days, he said, here's the thing, don't go into the swamp without a guide. It's more helpful if you know which alligators' backs to jump on and which ones to get around. So, he's done what he said he would do, and I think he'll continue to do that.
Thank you for coming. My name is Mark Powell, Anderson County. You mentioned education, and I've said this, I ran for some offices. I enjoy it. But you mentioned education, and you mentioned we're number 50. Two things. One, to my understanding, the reason we're number 50 is we require every student to take the exit exam, including those who can't even brush their teeth. Other states, if you don't make a C+, they look at you and go, no. Therefore, their grades are nationally higher than ours. So I do think that our community as a whole are unaware that we require a test where other states who look better than us look better because they only allow the better ones to take the test. That's number one. Number two, in my county, in my district, Anderson School District 1, a friend of mine was a teacher. The principal had a meeting. The master. He got his master's. He's a doctor. The doctor had a meeting with all the teachers and said, we have a new program. Every student in your room is required to get a minimum grade of a D. You are not allowed to fail any single student. A very good friend of mine raised her hand and said, I got a question. He said, what's that? She said, I have a guy in my class. Other than the fact that you put him on my roster, he's never filled out any homework. He's never done a single test. He doesn't even write his name on the test. So I have no proof he's in my classroom, other than the fact that you have him on my roster. What am I to do? What am I? When she said that, so the question is, our schools seem to be pushing to get students through with a better grade to make our schools either one, keep students in at $12,000 whatever dollars per student, or to make us look better. I want to know if you knew that was true. I don't know if it's true in other districts, but in Anderson, that's an absolute fact. In other districts in Anderson, I know it's a fact as well. Can you do anything about that, or did you know that existed?
I'm concerned about the kids who can't brush their teeth. I'm less concerned about our ranking. It's just a way that we can identify the fact that we're not doing it right. You have to call it what it is. If somebody is failing, you have to call it failing and you have to address it. And in our school systems, we don't do that. We don't call it A, B, C, D, F. We don't have failing schools. That might hurt somebody's feelings. Well, how about it's going to hurt everybody's feelings when that child can't brush their teeth, or I think, to use your terms, but more importantly, can't read. South Carolina is not doing well in the school systems. Let's all agree to that. Whether it's 50 or 49 or 52, whatever it is, they're not. And it's different in different districts. And education's local. That's what's so difficult about it. It is local. But here's the thing. Do y'all know we only have about 12 to 1,400 principals in this state? That's not a lot. That's a manageable group. And do you know what kind of training we give them every year? I don't either, but we do. And it's something about a roster or a test or something. We don't give them CEO training. How many people in here know of a good school with a good principal? Raise your hand. How many of you in here know of a bad school with a good principal? If we would just train the principals, the local leaders, to be able to manage a budget for crisis management, honestly, psychology, human resources, capital maintenance. Can you imagine how much better our schools would be? And we have the money to do it. That's the thing. We have the money to do it. We're not spending it right. I could just stand up, say that one thing, and then sit down, and I would have answered all your questions. We have the money to do it. We're not spending it right. And that would be that. We have $18,000 per student in Allendale County, which is arguably one of the worst educational situations in our state. And we've just called it failing. That's great. But do you know what we're doing about it? We're sending the same people in that we sent in 3 years ago to go fix it and save it. Again, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over. Come on. You fist bumped me earlier. Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, right? So we have to do it different. And do you know what the biggest return on investment is? A 3-year-old. Now, we don't need universal 3-year-old kindergarten. But there are some children in Title I schools that if we grabbed them at 3, they wouldn't be behind at 5. They'd be reading in 3rd grade. And then when they get to high school, they can choose if they want to go to college, a technical college, or if they want a skill and go work and feed themselves. Because that's the goal at the end of the day. Learn things and take care of yourself. So I think the Secretary of Education needs to be an appointment. I don't think the Secretary of Education needs to be an elected politician. I think we need to use the money that we have. We need to train the principals. And more importantly, when we have a failing school, our law needs to allow private, proven contractors to come in for a certain amount of time, 2 years, 3 years, and fix that school and then get back out. That's illegal in South Carolina right now. If you're a private contractor and you do this well, you have to come in and build your own school and then make a private school and then fix it. Well, you can talk about school choice if you want to, but in Allendale, there's one school. So how about we let somebody come in and fix it who knows what they're doing? And by the way, no politician that tells you they can fix education or any and all of this is telling you the truth. It's a matter of changing the way we do business and changing the trajectory.
Can I ask a Trump question? The recent travel ban on transgender, or sorry, not travel ban, transgender
You're mixing
ban.
up your bands.
Can you comment on the recent ban?
Yes. Well, sort of. So I defer to the generals and the admirals, as to what they believe is best for combat readiness and unit cohesion. That's no bureaucrat or politician knows more than they do. I'll tell you this, though, personally, we should not be paying a dime for elective the gender reassignment surgery. That's outrageous. If you sign up and join as a man, you serve as a man. If you join as a woman, you serve as a woman. I think it's not any more complicated than that.
Tom O'Hanlon from Pickens County. I appreciate you being here today. I've been labeled a progressive and called a lot worse, but I tend to vote with all these people, so I'm glad you're here. My question is about waste that you saw in government, what can be done about some of the waste you saw probably when you were at DHEC or with other government agencies.
Thank you, because now we're going to put everybody to sleep if I start rattling off all these numbers. I'll tell you this. The waste that I saw when we went in to the Department of Labor, I was really there. Remember, I was there to protect our jobs, right? Not necessarily run the agency, but that was my day job. And I couldn't help it. We ended up, and I don't say this as a badge of honor, I say it as a fact. We fired 100 people in the first 3 months. And I sat across from every single one of them and explained to them why and helped them use their skills to get jobs in the private sector. But you and I didn't need to pay for that. Not only that, but we improved our services. I think it was 32 minutes to 23 seconds. I mean, so it wasn't just let's fire people or let's reduce the budget by 20% just with a hammer. There was no sequester like President Barack Obama. It was surgical. So after doing that, Governor Haley asked me to go over to the largest, most complex agency in the state, 3,500 people, $500 million plus budget with, we were in charge of the CDC, the EPA, Department of, you name it, every acronym you can think of. We got in there, and of course, all 3,500 people were sure I was going to fire 3,500 people. So I'm pretty sure they're not voting for me. However, I didn't go there to make friends. I went in there to make sure we were doing things smart. And I also realized that the people who work there are very good at their jobs. Nobody got fired. Well, nobody. I won't say nobody. There wasn't 100 people fired. They're good engineers and good doctors, but there was no manager. And so we started looking at all the waste and all the problems. And do you know, in the first 18 months, we saved $68 million, and we improved every single solitary program. And we didn't ask the legislature for more. $68 million is a lot of money. Because what we did is we let the engineers be engineers and the doctors be doctors. And our permits got out 40% faster because time is money for businesses. But the important part about that is that we didn't do it just faster to be faster. We didn't cut any corners. Our appeals rate didn't go up. We got them out faster and they still had integrity. So I could drone on for hours about the bureaucracy in state government, but here's the point. I know what a proviso is. How many CEOs know what that is? I know what a pass-through is. I know how they pass through. I know what subcontractors do. I know how they procure contracts. I know who pays who. I know who doesn't like who. These are all important things when you're trying to navigate in that world. So tried to keep them awake, but it's sort of a calculator.
Ms. Templeton, I appreciate you being here. I'm Alan Quinn. I live right over the hill. I'm in Neil Collins's district. I don't think Neil's here tonight.
He's out of town.
He's out of town.
Yes, sir.
But anyway, I wanted to make a couple of comments and then a two-part question. First of all, I'm an advocate for Pickens County. And I agree that we're very conservative, but we're also 46 out of 46 counties in economic development. And as far as the trade school that you addressed, Pickens County has that. That's a good one. We've got a good one. We've got the model that you need to look at for the state.
Yes, sir. I agree.
It's a very good model, and I agree 100%. I had a granddaughter. I tried my best to get her to go to school. She wouldn't do it, but she's got a decent job. She enjoys what she's doing. And that's what some kids need to do. You know, they need to do what they want to do for their living. But I want to follow up on this guy over here that talked about the Confederate thing. Back when they took our flag off of the state grounds, I think you were in Columbia at that time, and Nikki Haley shoved.
I wasn't in Columbia, but go ahead.
Okay, Nikki Haley kind of shoved that thing through real quick after the tragedy in Charleston. If you had been a senator or a representative at that time, would you have voted to take our flag from the state ground?
Thank you. Those are good. All right, let me start with the first one, which is tech school.
No, I was just saying we've got that.
Oh, yes.
The question is, would you have voted to take the Confederate flag from the state ground?
He's got one more. I think what we did was we reacted, And I think that's what happens in government a lot. We have an emergency, and we create a response because it's the only thing we have control over. You know, I've already said, and mean it from the bottom of my heart, that I'm proud to be from South Carolina. I'm proud of the Confederacy. But I'm not going to second guess what the people in the State House did when I wasn't there. I live in Charleston. I drive by Mother Emanuel on a daily basis. And a bad person took something that's dear to us, took our heritage and turned it into hate. And I think that we reacted as a result. I think it was all we had to control. I really do. But it's enough. And now we've got to make sure that the promise that was made then when it came down by our legislature is kept. And that promise was to make sure that it was laid to rest in a place of honor in the Confederate, well, hopefully in the Confederate Museum, Memorial Museum. And we haven't done that yet.
I agree. That hadn't been done yet, but this is the next, and to me, the most important
Yes, sir.
question. At Alabama, they just passed a bill down there that would not allow them to take down any Confederate monuments. The flag was one thing. The monuments are going to be next. And I talked to Tom Davis. He was here last month, and I asked him the same question, and I didn't really get the answer that I wanted. And I'm going to follow up with him because I'm not sure that he understood what I was asking. But would you support a bill in South Carolina that would not allow any monuments? I'm not talking about Confederate. You know, we've got history from the Revolutionary War. We've got monuments all over South Carolina. And they'll be next. We have way too many politically correct groups in this state that want to erase all that. So would you be behind a bill 100% that for South Carolina to pass a bill not to allow any monuments to be removed unless, if they had to be for some reason, they would move to a more prominent place, which we didn't do with the Confederate flag yet. Hadn't been done yet.
I don't know what Tom would have said to that, but yes. I mean, the answer is yes. And we have a law in place now, and I would enforce it. You don't think I answered your question?
That law was in place when they took the flag down.
I would not allow monuments to be taken down. I want to be very direct with you. I'm not trying to, I would not allow monuments to be taken down. We're not going to rewrite history.
Hello, a friend of mine who can't be here asked me to ask this question on her behalf. So, would you actively work to regain local control of education by weaning the state off of federal funding, thereby removing their control over South Carolina classrooms?
I wish your friend were here. So let's talk about Common Core. Disaster. And the best thing about Common Core in South Carolina is we gave it back to them. So yes, I absolutely believe that education is local. I come from a family of teachers. I tell you what, my Aunt Martha Jean, and yes, I did say Martha, not Martha, because her name is Martha. Now, if you introduced yourself, you would be Martha, but her name is Martha Jean. And Martha Jean will not appreciate me saying this, but she scared me into learning my ABCs. She was a kindergarten teacher in Rock Hill, South Carolina for decades. My Aunt Mary, same thing. My mother went to Winthrop, taught at Carolina. I'm sorry. Taught teachers to teach as a professor. I get what teachers go through without having taught. I would never teach because I could not ever accomplish that successfully. I would be a horrible teacher. It is God's work. It's local. If we could allow our teachers to teach our children in a safe environment where nobody's worried about anything but learning, we'd be in great shape. Now, to your friend's question, if we give back the federal money, we will not be able to accomplish what we should be accomplishing. But in South Carolina, we're really good at not doing what they try to make us do anyway. So, Common Core, case in point.
You've already
we already talked about the immigration thing, but we've talked about the budget, we've talked about roads, we've talked about education, safety. It all umbrellas under immigration if immigration was fixed. And we're last in education, the second worst, only behind California in our budget. Corruption, we have our own swamp, and they want them here. Okay, so we've already discussed that. I wanted everybody here to hear me say that. But my second question is drilling offshore.
Drilling offshore?
Yes.
So I agree with President Trump's belief that that's a local issue. And up and down the East Coast, cities and towns have said they don't want offshore drilling. Barack Obama opened up the Atlantic Ocean, or tried to, under his presidency. And what concerns me is that South Carolina has 80,000 jobs related to tourism and oceanic recreation. And that's $4.4 billion for the state. I've also looked at the way that the lines are drawn and actually argued against them. The way the lines are drawn for what we would get credit for, or what we would get any kind of income from, if you look at the way North Carolina is, it kind of cuts us off. We sort of have a slither. And so that slither means that if, as we know now, we got all the oil and gas reserves off of our coast, it would last for 6 days. So I do not want to jeopardize 6 days of oil and gas supply for 80,000 South Carolinians and a $4.4 billion revenue stream. Plus, I mean, our natural resources are phenomenal. You know, I don't want to change the way our state looks.
Hey, Rick, let's jump to the guy in the white shirt over there. He's had a question for a while now.
Jesse works at my grocery store. He helps me with my groceries just about every week.
And he's going to be a history professor one day.
Hello. I'm not good at this. Is my first real public.
Me too. This is my first one too.
I'm sorry if this question doesn't come out too well, but I just graduated from Easley High, and all my 4 years there, I had one meeting with, well, it was in the auditorium with all my class, that kind of showcased some of the jobs in our area. And the man in the black jacket there, I don't remember your name, I'm sorry, but his was one of the jobs there, and talked about how he builds things for the Marines. But for most of us, we don't get any guidance on how to pick our job, which for the 1 in 10 who's very motivated, I hope I'm coming across right, that's great. But for the 9 out of 10 who don't know where to go, we don't get any help. And so I'm just asking you, is there any way that you could change that? Or, yeah, I'm sorry. No.
That's a great question and a really important point.
I agree with him. When I got out of high school, I was at loose ends and didn't know. I fell into the family business because that was the trade school stuff at Wren High School, class of '73. They taught me how to weld, how to do electrical wiring and that kind of work, and how to work on an engine, and I ended up owning my own truck and transfer truck and put it all to work. But he's right. I didn't have any. It would be great to have a guidance counselor that helped you figure out what you'd be good at. And
no, you're absolutely right. I mean, the Bible says if you have no vision, you will fall. We have guidance counselors in all of our schools, but we don't define what they should be doing. There should be an individual meeting with every child, and it should be way before you're a senior. It should be way before you're a junior, quite frankly, because there's a trajectory. There are certain courses you could be taking, certain things you could be doing to get ready. Now, there's a balance there, because it used to be that we would, does anybody remember the poster, work smarter, not harder? Everybody remembers that. That's why my grandfather's profession isn't honorable anymore. Everybody's supposed to go to college. Well, everybody's not going to go to college. We don't need everybody to go to college. In Georgia, everybody goes to college, gets a psychology degree, and then like me, when I graduated from Wofford, we go when we rotate shifts in a weave mill to feed ourselves. So why not catch that, beforehand? So again, it goes back to education being local and putting everybody back where they're supposed to be. Teachers actually getting to teach instead of filling out paperwork and being the disciplinarians and leaders, the principals leading. The guidance counselors are there. They're supposed to help you with your vision. And again, unfortunately, the governor's not in charge of education, but the governor does have a bully pulpit and can lead and can create that vision. And I think it's a wonderful idea. Sir.
This is Bill Coleman from Greenville. Would you like to make a statement about Islamic Jihad, or do you want me to ask you a specific question?
I'd be happy for you to ask me a question.
Do you believe that any advancement of Islam by anyone in the United States is an act of war against our freedom, our lives, and all we hold dear?
I believe that any act of terrorism or any jihad is absolutely an act of terrorism. Of course, this nation was founded on freedom of religion, and I think that our religion's under attack. I think every day as Christians, we're having to fight in our schools. We're having to fight about what our churches taught us and what we believe and what we pass on and hold dear with our children. You won't find anybody to fight harder for religious freedom. You will also not find anybody that's more law enforcement centric. I sat on the Homeland Security Advisory Council when I was in government with SLED. I was in the server room of our agency on the night that Barack Hussein Obama was reelected, and foreign nationals were trying to hack into our nuclear schematics, your birth certificate, death certificates, the personal health information of everybody in this room and their children. And we stopped it. I sat on the State Emergency Response Commission when I was in charge of things at the port. When I was at the port, I reviewed all of the security. So I am acutely aware of the attacks on this country. It's why I'm such a supporter of the Second Amendment. Obviously, I'm not sure I would be up here as a Republican if I didn't believe in the Second Amendment or right to, keep and bear arms, and our God-given right to defend ourselves and our families. But every politician will tell you that. But I'm a card-carrying member of the NRA. I've had a concealed weapons permit way before I ever got involved in politics. And I won't talk about how I am at hunting, but I do like it. What Charlton Heston, so I can't believe I'm quoting Charlton Heston. My husband's gonna be so proud. Said that the only thing that you can do about a bad man with a gun is a good man with a gun. So did I get it right? He is gonna be. Somebody call my husband. He's gonna be very proud. No, he's not watching. I'm sure he's not watching. He is not excited about. He's probably feeding the children chicken nuggets.
When it comes time to use a gun, it'll be too late. They will have already won the political battle. Do you see a pathway to stopping the advance of Islam in the United States?
I think one of the first places that we start is where we turn the spigot off. So right now, the fact that we have refugees coming in, and we have all types of people coming in from all over the United States, and we don't know where they're coming from. We don't know what they mean to do, and we don't really have they don't have a government to help us figure that out. So I agree that we have to vet people before they come in first. I was actually in government when Ebola happened, when we were all worried about Ebola. And did y'all know that in order to talk to the President of the United States, you have to have super secret security clearance, and they make you go to SLED on a secure line? So you're all, official, and you're, walking through being all official and important, and then on the phone goes, "Hey guys," I can't do it, Barack Obama. "Hey guys, how you doing?" And I was like, oh my gosh, sound more presidential. This is really a big deal. But when Ebola happened, I got on the phone with the President of the United States because they were letting people come in from the red zone, and they were stopping them. They're like, well, we get about 90% of them in these 5 different airports. I was like, you're in charge. Make them all come into the same one airport. Come on. There's just some really simple things that we need to be able to do to protect ourselves. So, to your point, it is not just a physical war. There's no question. And it's a great balance between our freedoms and stopping the harm that they are trying to inflict on us.
Ms. Templeton, my name is Presley Stutz. I live in Greenville. We have the grandkids in for extended weekend. I was driving them back to Mooresville, North Carolina today, and I was telling them I'm going to go meet a gubernatorial candidate. And I told them your name, and my 11-year-old grandson said, "Is she crazy or what?" Running for governor. I've been here in South Carolina 10 years, and I've got a couple questions for you, and they're going to be hard-hitting questions because, unfortunately, politics is a blood sport, and as we get closer, we see things. But the first question is, I've watched Mark Sanford and Nikki Haley try to deal with these intransigent elected officials we have no part in electing. What makes you think you're any better, any different to change anything these guys do? That's my first question, if you would answer that first, please.
Not better and not different. I am an adult and a professional and a truth teller, and I don't surprise people. I think that Chairman Hyatt can attest to the fact that when immigration was on the table, when I was the labor secretary, the Republicans and the Democrats were literally chest to chest, literally. And it was Gerald Malloy, if any of you know him, he's this tall and this wide. And it was Larry Martin, if any of you know him, and he's not this wide and this tall. And they were physically touching. And they were at the end of a long table, and I was at this end, and they both stopped and they looked at me, and they said, "Who's right?" And guys, it was right outside of the Senate floor, and that's a 2-story area, and all the press was looking down over us. Everything got quiet. It was like Shakespeare in the Round. It was medieval, awful. And I said, "You're both right. This is a policy question. You're sufficient on the law. You're constitutionally accurate. We're in good shape." Everyone in the State House hated me for 2 weeks. Everybody was mad because I hadn't picked their side. 2 weeks and a day later, I had the respect of the lion's share. I won't ever speak for the majority, everybody. But I had their respect because they knew that I would never surprise them and I would never lie to them. So I think that when you treat people with respect and you're honest with them, it's the gold standard. And if you're there and you're pure of intent, you don't need the issue. You don't need to be acrimonious. You don't need to make things up to fight with people, but you actually want to get things done. I think it's a whole different purity of intent. It's a whole different cellular truth. So.
Okay.
Okay.
This swamp that we talk about, we've got a big one in South Carolina as well. You've been right in the midst of that swamp, I understand, from what I read. You were fired or resigned. I don't know which one to believe. Maybe you can help clarify that for us. And only now you're talking about it. Why weren't you talking about the corruption that was going on at the Ports Authority way back when that happened?
I did.
You did?
Yep.
Okay.
So to let you know what he's talking about, you know, when you raise more than the last 3 governors, your first quarter, and then you do it again your second quarter, it makes people very nervous in that entrenched swamp that we're going to clean out. And so they started to hit me. So I'm starting to feel like I understand Donald Trump a little bit better with the liberal media and the bureaucrats, you know, teaming up. But I went to the port after I left government, and I was there for 3 weeks. And I'm just going to give you the timeline. I'm not going to give you any commentary. On a Wednesday, there was a request for contracts from the media. And I was in charge of responding to that under the Freedom of Information Act, and I didn't blink. I responded to it on Thursday. On Friday, I wasn't there because it was fall break for the kids, and on Monday, I got a call that I was fired. I later learned, a couple weeks later, when I got a phone call from a mutual friend, that the Quins, who were the contracts, and the Quins who are, one of them's indicted now, and the Quins who are under investigation, that they were mad at me, and they wanted to talk to me. I said, well, I'm coming to Columbia anyway. The Boeing executives are coming in. I'm meeting them. I'll come by. I don't have anything to hide. What are you upset about? Why are you trying to hurt us? So I'm not trying to hurt you. My money goes into the port. My taxpayer money goes into the port. The port employs 1 out of 11 people in the state of South Carolina. It's an incredible natural asset that we have. And I don't think it's right that you fleece the port and that you take my money and that we're spending millions of dollars. And so I was asked to comply with the law, and I did, and I gave the contracts over. That's all on record. It's all in the paper. I didn't talk about it because I'm the girl in 2nd grade when the teacher went out to smoke her cigarette that was assigned to take the names of the kids in the classroom. I am a dork. I'm a rule follower. I've never, ever been fired before, and it's embarrassing. So I did what I needed to do. I did the right thing. I gave the contracts to the paper as requested. I was interviewed by the FBI. I was interviewed by SLED. And everything else is for law enforcement to take care of. They're taking care of it. So the reason that came out, I didn't decide I wanted to talk about it because I'm talking about corruption. I decided to run because I was in the middle of corruption. I watched it happen. The reason it's being talked about now is because one of the other campaigns dispatched some reporters to come ask me about my time at DHEC, my time at Department of Revenue, my time at. And they were very disappointed to find that it was all good. And then he asked the question. Andy Shane of the Post and Courier said, have you ever been fired? And I'll tell you what, y'all might not like everything I have to say over the next 8 years, 10 years, but you will always know that it's the truth. He said, have you ever been fired? And I said, I have. And he didn't really care about that. He cared about the fact that the FBI had interviewed me, and it was the first time on record they could confirm that the FBI was investigating Columbia. And he said, have they talked to anybody else? And I said, yep. And so he went and verified with everybody else and wrote a story. And when I got hit back from the port, you know what we found out? The hit back was written by the attorneys representing the Quins. That was published this weekend. I didn't know that. But my response back was just as I've told you. 1 in 11 jobs. We protect the port, and law enforcement can do the rest.
Catherine?
Yes, sir.
While you're on this subject, let's hit it all.
Let's hit it all.
Would you care to explain the consulting fee for the transition period after when you left DHEC?
I love the way that it's been couched, the consulting fee for the transition period.
That's the way it's reported in the news.
Exactly. That's the way it's reported.
That's the reason I phrased it that way.
Yes, no, I know. I'm not fussing at you. It's just typical. Do y'all know that bad things happen in South Carolina that you didn't even know about today? Do y'all know who John Cameron is? He was in charge of the Port of New York during 9/11. He works for us now in Charleston. If John Cameron has exhausted every intelligence, resource, and experience he has had, and he's calling you on your phone Saturday night at 10 o'clock, something's gone bad wrong. He called me at 10 o'clock when Ebola was going on and said, we have a ship coming in from the red zone. The CDC won't help me. The Customs won't help me. The Coast Guard won't help me. Nobody can tell me what to do. Can you fix it? What do we do? And an hour later, I got off the phone with him, and my husband rolled over because I didn't bother to leave the bedroom. And he said, it's terrifying that you just made that decision. I got a call one night on a Sunday night. Ma'am, we need your permission to do a reverse 911 in Aiken County because there's a dam about to break. The governor needs your permission. Like, why did you even waste the 32 seconds it took you to call me? Bad things happen at DHEC that DHEC handles. They do. And when the director of DHEC, who has secret security clearance with the CDC, you know, we are over all nuclear radiation. Nuclear things are passing through the state, and I knew about it because if something bad happened, we had to be ready. When the director of DHEC leaves, every time, you have to stay available until the next director comes in. It happened to my predecessor. This has been going on for decades. And honestly, we thought, in practicality, and y'all can verify this, we thought the next director was going to be confirmed within the next couple weeks. And in fact, she withdrew. So we didn't have another director for months. So It's called continuity of government. It's for safety. And my successor is not now taking the contract that she was offered because the media is making it so hot, making it such a bad issue. I'll tell you this, if I were in charge of Columbia, she'd be on contract. Because if I were in charge of Columbia, I wouldn't worry about what the paper was saying. I'd make sure you were safe. So there's that. There was a DOR contract many months later. I don't know how many months later it was. I told you already about the foreign nationals hacking DHEC when we were on election night. Well, after that happened, there was a huge investigation, but we did a deep dive into your security at SLED, at DHEC, and at the Budget Control Board. And because of that, I spent a couple years with some big computer contracts and security. Y'all remember when DOR got hacked? Bad. Let me be Donald Trump for a minute. Hack, bad. Your stuff, bad. When DHEC got hacked, bad. But we stopped it. So when DOR decided, Department of Revenue, the tax agency, decided that they wanted to stop thieves from taking your identity and your money in fraud, the director asked me to come over and help for a couple of months and get the project started. And I did. So we didn't just talk about your security. We actually fixed it, and it worked. And that was in order to be involved with that. I had to have legal clearances. I had to have legally be on. In fact, you'll find if you do enough research, I didn't even have like an LLC or any kind of entity to receive money at DHEC until after, we didn't have a director and she withdrew. So,
would it be fair to say that you were paid for work done?
See, that's what I'm going to say from now on. That's why this is good. This is my first. I got paid for work I did. Yes.
Consulting fee makes it sound like people were calling you on the phone every once in a while and asking you a question. You were actually doing work for the state to protect. I'm not taking sides. I'm just asking a question.
Jamie Self of the state paper, actually, I got a text before I came in here, is calling around to all the different agencies and asking them if I ever asked them for a consulting contract or lobbied them. No. No.
When we're getting ready for this thing, I was thinking about you doing this and standing up in front of the people, and you said you'd never done this before. But, I couldn't imagine somebody that, again, I'm not taking sides. I've been reading your bio. I'm just sharing what knowledge. But you worked with the only woman that took on the automotive workers.
The UAW, Jimmy Hoffa.
Yes. In Tennessee, and kept the union out of the Japanese automakers plants in Tennessee, right? So it's hard for me to imagine somebody that's been fighting the union for 20 years to be afraid of a few people in Pickens County and facing a crowd. So,
You know what? I appreciate you saying that. The thing that makes this so difficult is that we're not going to agree on everything. And I haven't learned yet. My learning curve is not about policy and about government and about business. It is about being a politician. And so, I'll tell you, I got a call last Thursday from a friend who said, "What are you going to say when they ask you this question?" I started answering it, and they were like, "No, noun, verb, Catherine, you talk too much." And I said, "Okay." So I'm getting there. And I wanted to come here because I think that people believe that just because I live in Charleston that I, have some type of, that I'm this, or this. I'm a conservative Republican, born and bred. There's not any question. I am, we haven't talked about my pro-life stance, but I am happy to answer that question.
Where do you stand on the issue of life? I'll put it to you this way. This is one of my favorite topics and something I think we need to address and fight. I believe in South Carolina now, is it 22 weeks?
19.
It's down to 19 now. Okay, I know.
The threshold of pain.
New legislation. Until we can overturn Roe v. Wade, the best we can do is restrict it as much as possible. How far can we take those restrictions? What's the next step to protect life?
So this is not a political question for me. I'm the only girl running. Let's start with that. This is not a political question for me, but again, it's why I'm not a very good politician. It's a personal question. I have 3 children, and the second group were twins. and I'm going to get through this one without crying. This is a good one that you know, I'm practicing to be a politician, right? When I was pregnant with the twins, the doctors came in and said they needed to do more tests because it was very early, and they needed to figure out basically what the best course of action was. Should we abort one of the children, or would that hurt the other one because one of them has a problem, and it was all this good stuff. But we need to run more tests. And my husband and I didn't call in our pastor, and we really didn't even, I don't think, go out of the room. We kind of looked at each other, didn't say a whole lot, and looked at the doctor and said, we don't need to run any more tests. These kids are our kids. For as long as God lets us have them, we protect them. And that was that. I'm getting it. I'm going to do it. And so, so of course, I'm pro-life. I do think that there are exceptions for rape, or excuse me, not for rape, for incest. And for life of the mother, I think that's a clinical, that's a personal decision with your doctors. But I also had a life. Sorry, I got it. I got this. I also had a life-threatening illness brought on by pregnancy, and so, you know, you're not going to find anybody that's more pro-life than I am. Somebody said, if you were the Supreme Court justice, would you overturn Roe versus Wade? You know, that gets into lawyerese and such technicalities. I can just tell you that we've got to protect our babies and our innocence.
Could we move do you think it's possible to move it back before 19 weeks?
I don't know. Do you think there's the political will to do that? I mean, the reason it's at 19 is because there's at least one study that says that a baby can feel pain after 19 weeks. And that makes it feel real to those who can't otherwise feel it.
Not to keep coming back at you or beat a dead horse. How about, for a while there was a lot of talk about requiring somebody to see an ultrasound before, you know, talk to somebody, see your options, see the ultrasound, have an ultrasound before an abortion. Do you think that's something that we could do in South Carolina?
You know, there's a requirement that you have some type of literature at least 24 hours beforehand. And there's always been an argument about what that literature should say. And what's happened practically is they mail it to the patient. And I'm here to tell you, at 18, I don't think that you maybe can read that piece of paper and make a good decision. And if you're a parent and you have a 14 or 15-year-old, and you know, I'm just not sure a piece of paper does it. So I don't know, and I don't know what an ultrasound looks like for a 1-month-old. Do you know?
I do. I've got one at home with my
Yeah,
daughter
when she was a month old, or a month after conception.
Very close. When we found out she was pregnant, they did it right then, and it's, I mean, she's like 2 or 3 centimeters.
Peanut.
Yeah, peanut, literally.
Peanut.
I'll prove to you something.
Yeah.
My prized possession.
You know, it's interesting, and that's a very interesting suggestion, because with the argument being, what do we tell them? What do we say? How do we counsel? You don't have to say anything if you show a picture. 1,000 words?
Anybody else?
Close primary?
Oh, absolutely.
Close the primary. How do you feel about that? That's fine. I doesn't bother me one way or the other. Actually, I've looked at the numbers, and in, I think, the last gubernatorial race, hope I'm right about this, there were only 7,000 crossovers in a sea of 400,000 people.
We just lost. Kevin Bryant barely won.
Yeah, and
Say known progressive / moderate.
mm-hmm.
Barely won.
And then in the special,
400 crossover just in his district.
interesting.
For his Senate seat.
Interesting.
So it's very major in area.
Yeah.
People like Lindsey Graham actually send people to Democratic areas to try to get them to vote. You know, they explain to them, look, you're in a Republican state. If you want someone who's a moderate, have your people come out and vote for me.
Let's don't forget Neil Collins.
I can't comment on that. That'd be like sour grapes or something. So after somebody else to say, I can't comment on that.
That's why we started with be nice. Right?
Let's try to get this back onto something you're probably more comfortable to talk about than other
Than
elected
crying.
officials.
Yes,
But
thank you.
a topic that you said that you were happy to talk about, life. Going back to that real fast. Are you aware of Senator Rice's bill that he has in the Senate? I believe it's going to be coming up for a committee around January or December. Are you familiar with it? Will you support it, or will you at least learn more information about it? And secondly, in a question that should be a knockout of the park for anyone running for office, you mentioned the bully pulpit that the governor will have. What are the issues that you are passionate about and want to use the bully pulpit for as governor?
Thank you. So we spoke briefly at the South Carolina GOP state convention about the bill. Has it been pre-filed? I mean, it's in the. Yeah. It's in full committee. Okay, in the Senate. And we talked about it, and I've learned more about it, and we have agreed. You know, we've pledged to sit down and talk more about it. The top 5 issues, I'll be honest with you, it really, all right, I'm going to make y'all do something just to make sure you're still awake. Raise your hands. It's okay. Raise your hands. I want you to put your hand down when you disagree with me, okay? You want to be safe. No, you do want to be safe, Davy Hyatt. You want to be safe. You want to make a good living. You want your kids to reach their God-given potential. And you don't want someone to take your good living and waste it on ridiculous things. You want to do what you want to do until it hurts somebody else. Okay, that's pretty basic, right? So we need safety. It's good. My husband looked at me and was like, you just jabber on. Why don't you tell me what you want? And I was like, these are the things. So safety. We got to have safety. We got to have education. We have to have infrastructure. We have a health care burden, unfortunately, and we have debt. Those are the things. None of that gets better. That gets better with math, and that gets better with leadership and outcomes, but none of it gets better if we don't have some societal change in South Carolina, if we don't have people who want to work, if we don't have nuclear families with 2 parents, if we don't have really some things starting in the home. And there's not a governor who can do anything but use the bully pulpit to talk about vision, to talk about Christianity, to talk about families first, to coin a phrase from David Beasley. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just live right down the street. I had a question, but first, since you hit on something, I just want to bring it to your attention. You said that you sort of were in favor of abortion because of incest, that you might support that. I'm just going to ask that you really think that over, because that child that's conceived is just as important as a child that's conceived in love in a right relationship. And that child doesn't deserve to be killed just because of the sin of the parents. So I want you to think that over some more.
And that's why I'm not for the rape exception.
Yeah,
Agree.
it's the same thing. You know, it's not the child's fault, and they still have value. But the thing that I wanted to ask you was, with what's going on so much in a lot of the states now with homosexuality and transgenders, I think most people in this room know that's sin. God says it's wrong, and it should be wrong in the law, but unfortunately we're having problems with that. But if South Carolina were in a situation like North Carolina got into, and you were the governor, and we had a bill, and everybody was supposed to use the correct bathroom, and then you had all the pressure from these different companies and organizations saying that they're going to boycott our state as long as that law's in effect, would you buckle like North Carolina did, or would you stand up for the Lord's word?
So again, this is a personal one because I have 3 children in middle school, and I'm really not trying to be flip when I answer this. This is truly, if you're a boy, you go to the boys' room. If you're a girl, you go to the little girl's room. And if you're a pervert, we throw you in jail and throw away the keys. I'm just not sure there's anything else to say.
But would you stand up against all that
Sure. I mean, absolutely. I think the thing we're afraid of is we're afraid of someone who's confused coming into anyone's restroom or being inappropriate, and that's illegal now, and it would be enforced. Absolutely. It's not appropriate now.
It's 8 o'clock, and Mutt's actually closes at 8.
And these people would like to go home.
I can't thank you enough for coming. Truly enjoyed listening to you and getting to know you.
Thank you.
And I hope all you folks here will tell your friends about the Pickens County GOP. You can tell we're a little more relaxed maybe here, a little more homey, a little more friendly. This is a neighborhood get-together. Everybody's welcome. We don't stand on formality, more casual. Hey, how y'all? Anyway, thank you all for coming, and come back the next time. All of the candidates running for governor have an open invitation to come here. We'll do it. I would love to do something like see you and the lieutenant governor here together.
He's a friend. He is.
Of us too.
I'm sure.
Kevin's a good guy.
He is.
And something like that would be nice. And what I'm trying to do is give folks the opportunity to do something like this, meet you close up and talk to you, get to know you, so when they get to the ballot box, they'll know who they're voting for.
And I appreciate your patience. I appreciate y'all suffering my learning curve. I appreciate your comments. And, I'll get more politician-y one day. It'll be easier to listen to, but, it is what it is, and I'm just trying to do for us.